All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and non-binaries, interplanetary, intergalactic time travelers, as you see fit to call yourselves. We do salute you. This is Oliver, and I'm in a bunker I call Studio 72 in the People's Republic of Portland and Multnomah County. And I come to you this evening. I want to do a little bit of an analysis on Zenith Energy. Zenith has been a hot button for years here in Portland. And that's because there's been a lot of environmental opposition. Boy, that painting is really bright, isn't it? It's getting a lot of glare up there. Still pretty brutal. Oh, wow. Okay, so um, the environmentalists and we have, that's one of the things that we have here in Portland, is we've got a tremendous amount of environmentalists. Why is that? Well, that's part programming, and it's also because we live in a beautiful state. We live in a beautiful region of the Pacific Northwest. Oregon is just outstanding. It's got beautiful oceans, forests, mountains, the Cascades. We've got tourists love the snow, the snowboarding, the recreation. It's really a lovely, lovely place. Outside of a small percentage of anarcho-communists that hate capitalism, actually hate America, and really hate Portland and hate Oregon, but we're here taking care of them. And one of the things that they really get bent out of shape about is that's fossil fuels. That's right. They hate fossil fuels. They don't understand what fossil fuels means. They don't understand what small business. They don't care about small business. They don't understand the essence of making small business revenue and success here in Portland with fossil fuels. Without that, it is detrimental. And that's one of the things that my key arguments in opposition is that the people do not grasp, the majority of folks do not grasp the dynamics of working poor families. These are families that are struggling, and they need cheap fuel to exist and survive and thrive. It's essential, absolutely critical. And we've seen that. That's one thing, one of the positives, that after surviving our shared trauma from the Biden Kamala Harris regime administration, is we saw what happens with their vaccine experimental mandates, the experimental jab mandates, the mRNA, the gene therapy they told everybody somehow would cure flu and make you'd never need it ever again, and you'll never get sick if you get these experimental gene therapy. That's what they told us. It turned out none of that was true. It was all false, right? But that's what the Democrats believed, and that's what the Democrats told us. And there was a whole bunch of small independents that we were all silenced on YouTube, banned from Meta, Facebook, banned from, kicked off of Twitter before Elon came in and started his revelations of what the FBI and the CIA was micromanaging the social media platform, if you will. So what I want to do here briefly is take a look at or analyze what the Portland City Council's listening session that they had today. And I caught a little bit of it earlier, and then I just gone through a whole bunch of it now, listening to the public part. I caught a little bit of the commissioners' questions, I guess, and I haven't seen the whole pitch that Zenith did, but I did catch a good chunk of it. So they invited Zenith Energy reps to come, and then I believe the second part of it was it appears to me that they had the public listening, and the public listening really looks like kind of like communist chairman Green, commissioner chairman communist Marxist Greens charade, his little staged little environmental. Let's see if we can make some young people sick and get the elderly blue-haired people sick from fear and anxiety, so we can make a good point of shutting down and smacking down capitalism, because fossil fuels and capitalism go hand in hand. And we can see very clearly from Chairman Green's statements in his objectives, this whole bringing in the stop Zenith train car, the whole listening session, you can see in the cameras that the whole crowd is wearing red and wearing anti-Zenith slogans on t-shirts. These are Green's friends and not colleagues, but, or maybe wrong word in the pretense of describing what this is all about. You can see that this guy is clearly a real chunk of ulcering sore on working class Portland and Oregon. And I don't say that lightly. I'm not a fan of people with no hair, but I'm not a hater. But, anytime I see skinheads, it reminds me of the trauma of the 1980s of fighting and getting severely hurt several times fighting skinhead Nazis. And that's what Chairman Green kind of reminds me of. Is he looks like an environmental Nazi to me, and he sounds like one too. But so with that pretext, that's my opinion. I really wanted to end with my opinion, but you know what? It's always just one long Oliver's opinion with these little videos, right? So let me see if I can show you a little bit of some things here. A little bit of the actual, this is the city council. So let me see if you can see that. If I can click that, I see me there in the corner. So then I go back to that. Now, this is a question. I'm going to flip here on, this is a question that at the end of all the discussion, it's all wrapping down here, and you can see this. It should be in the show notes. I'll post it in the comments if I didn't click it in the show notes, which it should be there. But this is, I'm trying to be nice. It's so rude calling him Pirate Novik, but and I won't. I shouldn't do that because it's ableism, and the guy's it's Captain Hook. He's got one arm that's a hook. And he actually wears a pirate hat. He actually embraces the whole pirate thing. I think he's like 36 inches, 40 inches. So he really does, something like that. I don't know the exact height, but he's a very, very tiny kind of pirate little dude. And we've survived him. Portland shared trauma. We survived him, and he's now been seated because of name recognition. Nobody liked him. We ousted him in the past, and now he's wormed his way back in, kind of like, tunnel rats under your home if you have holes in your foundation. So he's kind of a chairman filled too, but not as bad as Chairman Green, as in Marxist Chairman Green, Commissioner Green, which I clearly do not like, and he's my number one public enemy at this point. But he's asking this question, and it's absurd, but just let me play it if it'll play, and just let you just soak it in. Soak it in.
Bit off topic, but I can't resist asking with this group of folks here. Every gas station is a fossil fuel terminal. And I discovered recently that a number of California cities, including Sacramento, are thinking about banning new gas stations, or maybe like Sacramento, for example, is talking about banning new gas stations unless they also provide 50 kilowatt or greater direct current fast charger electric vehicle charging stations at a ratio of at least 1-to-1 of new gas fuel nozzles. And I was just curious, I haven't really researched this, but how many people here would support such a proposal if someone brought it forward? Just by show of hands. Thank you.
So a lot of people raised their hands. I did see a few.
Well, that's fun to follow.
That's fun to follow, Commissioner Dan Ryan. Now, I like Commissioner Dan Ryan. He really is the sage, wise scholar. He's got the chops and experience from coming from the past city council. He's got extensive experience in our homeless crisis. He lost his brother, I believe. His name was Timothy. Got a bunch of Timothys in the family. And so it resonates with me. That connected with me. I'll forever remember Dan Ryan as losing his brother in a tent on the homeless on the streets of Portland, named Timothy. If I've got the story right, I believe he shared that one time. That's a lot of punch in my book. Okay. I also like him for some other reasons, just because he's connected to the old Bud Clark posse, and I've got some old deep Portland roots with the mayor Bud Clark posse. I believe he does. Maybe I'm wrong about that too, but let me. I wasn't talking about Dan. Let me break down what the insanity of what not chairman Novick just said. Commissioner, I'm going to try to be nice. I'm going to try to be polite. Okay, I got to work on this. I really do. But Novick, commissioner, just asked one of the most stupidest questions. And why was it ignorant? Because he's an absolute fool to make himself look like he's an environmentalist by suggesting that it's safer to put a Tesla or EV charging station, which are explosive in nature, in and with fossil fuel gasoline gas stations. To mandate that is what he's itching at. I think he's probably going to come up with some bizarre, explosive proposal, like Chairman Green has got some little nasty little fossil fuel tricks, anti-capitalism ideas that he's going to propose here too. Probably right with Zenith is what he threatens or implies here. One of these. It's the stupidest fucking idea in the world. These EV batteries, lithium batteries, explode from overcharging. They have all these technical terms of what they call overrunning, or what it's basically, it's just overcharging, and they ignite. So imagine that explosion happening, just like we saw down in Malibu and these different fires. There's also another one that may still be smoldering and has been for a week, of a lithium battery plant in Monterey in California. So we examine that and we see that the toxic chemicals and plumes from these EV batteries, they can't be put out. They can't be put out. They have to let them burn out, because they don't, you put water on it and it makes it 10 times more explosive and bad. Which is it's insane, and it's not talked about. And we're starting to see some of this come out, because we're seeing that the fires that down in the Santa Ana, down in South California, the most amount of Teslas are in the entire country, probably the world. Amount of Teslas in the lithium batteries, Tesla means lithium batteries, is in that area. And they fueled the fire. So you had winds. It wasn't climate change. It wasn't even weather change. They have winds off the Santa Ana every year, all the time, pretty much all the time, windy at the beach. Okay? But sometimes you're going to have huge 80 mile an hour, 100 mile an hour hurricane type gusts. But that happens. That's regular. That's California. Okay? I don't know how regular. I don't want to, miss disinformation there, but it happens, and we hear about them. Winds are explosive, but when you fuel them with these lithium-ion batteries that were just abandoned, people couldn't get out. They were terrified and traumatized. They couldn't get their vehicles out. Things were log jammed out. So they left their Teslas. They left their electric vehicles there in the roads that burned. And they burned hotter than anything, like nuclear bombs. They burned hotter than anything we've ever seen, is the fires from these lithium-ion batteries, okay? Just like we're seeing I think it actually re-erupted. Now, I don't have all the data on that Monterey lithium battery plant. It's the largest, I believe, in the world. I thought it was the largest in California or the country. Clearly the largest in California. This is another fire that's being minimized. It's a lithium battery plant, and it reignited. So I didn't even intend to go on about that, And so I don't have a link to it, but there's a whole video there that needs to be broken down on that plant. It kept coming back. They didn't even want to do foam on it. You can't put water on it, and it's poisoned all the community. It's a most toxic fumes that you could have. They evacuated all these people out of Monterey Bay, which is in between the southern fires and the bay, right there in California. So what we're seeing is what I saw coming for years ago and expressed the concerns, but there was nothing with this Biden administration with their electric vehicle mandates, not even saying it's an option. These mandates, the same mandates that the Oregon Democrats are dictating to here in Oregon. Now we're going to have these EV cars, which are really ticking time bombs throughout our forests and wilderness, by tourists and by locals, that during summer and during high wind events are going to ignite our entire state like we've never seen before, just like we witnessed in California, just like California's gotten a taste of that. There's plenty more of that to come for California when you have arsonists running wild, just like we have here in Oregon. We had a couple of arsonists that were arrested in California with their own fire truck. Yeah. They had their own fire truck hidden behind some barn, and they drove down. They said they're with some imaginary make-believe Roaring Rivers Fire Department. They made it up, stealing yellow jackets. Now, we've seen other crews doing this, other teams down in Southern California, to come in like vultures and pick the bones and carcasses of the dead bodies, the dead cars, and the burned out houses. The abandoned houses, right? And the abandoned cars, okay? So we've seen this firsthand in California, and we're going to witness more of it unless we reverse course immediately. And we just have that long-winded little diatribe. My brain is like a wildfire, so bear with me, pun intended. The commissioner just said we should mandate the electric vehicle ion lithium battery charging stations in the property of the gasoline stations. Now, you don't have to be a firefighter to understand. You don't have to be a scientist to understand explosive lithium batteries that are overheating and what happens with fossil fuels. Are you with me? And Novik thinks it's a real safe, good idea for the climate change hysteria to propose and ask for everyone in the room to raise their hands if they thought it was a good idea, because he's got something drafted up he wants to present. And he also said that this is actually proposals that are happening from these ignorant fucks down in California, in Sacramento, in other cities. They want to mandate, a part of eliminating this great demonized fossil fuel, which is not a bad thing at all. Period. It's not causing the globe to warm. It's not causing weather events. It's not claiming the boogeyman Santa Claus for adults climate change, because climate change is like Santa Claus for grown-ups. It's make-believe and pretend. Point blank. Period. Pause. Long pause. Ignorant. Stupid. You with me? You hear me? You don't put the charging stations under tens of thousands of gallons of fossil fuel. All right, genius? All right, climate change activists? All right, Pirate Novik, Commissioner Novik, sir? Stupid shit gets stupid results. Okay? Bad idea. All right? Real bad idea. One of the stupidest things I've ever heard anyone say at a city council was what I just heard Commissioner Novik suggest and ask. Who here wants to see mandated EV charging stations next to explosive, high-powered tens of thousands of gallons of fossil fuels? I do. That sounds good, Commissioner. Yeah, well, that's exactly what we need to do. We got to wean ourselves off of these fossil fuels we've been using for a long time. Wow. Holy God. Unbelievable. I missed when I heard that. It was like a sprocket went boing out the side of my friggin' noodle. Let me try to regain my composure. Okay. If at all possible, which it may not be. So I would encourage you to take a look at that Portland City Council listening session. This is obviously some bizarro thing that Green cooked up, and he's, it's the whole framing of Portland is all about climate and climate. It's just absolute friggin' lunacy. Now, let me tell you something here. As a small business guy, my whole life in Portland, as a local, multi-generational Portland guy, okay, and somebody who was in the environmental movement for decades and decades. I've fundraised and helped with campaigns since the 90s for everyone. Greenpeace, Sierra Club, the PIRGs, Ralph Nader's public interest research groups, the PIRGs. I was field manager and working right up into the ladder of the public interest research groups for years because I was a good fundraiser. And I could connect with people and I can tell people clearly why they need to make donations. But I'm feeling much better. That's all past. That's all behind me now. Okay. I care about the environment and I am a conservationist, but I see that these NGOs are money laundering operations that tell people here locally in Portland that they're going to fight for their water and fight for the forest when all of their money goes to Washington, D.C. and then gets trickled back into the state campaigns, the PIRGs and Sierra Clubs and Greenpeace. They all use the same template. Most of that money is being sent out into lobbyists to grease the palms like Jeff Merkley and Senator Wyden and Senator Merkley to grease them, juice them up. And that's why they come out sounding like they're environmentalists when they're just dipshits and have no fucking clue of what the hell's going on. As a small business guy, if we don't have cheap, affordable fossil fuels, a small business dies. A small business dies in multiple levels. We saw this. Let me back up to my thought before. We saw this with the Biden-Kamala Harris regime, the administration. When they put those mandates on, it shut down the truckers. It shut down the supply lines. And then the COVID, with the hysteria of that, and the mandates together in conjunction, it shut down the shipping supply of oil and coming from other countries and the ports. It shut down the ports for unloading, and offloading of everything. All of our supplies, our food, our electronics, everything, smart chips to build, everything was disrupted and everything went up. We've still never recovered from the hyperinflation. Feels like hyperinflation to me. They're trying to say it's stabilized. It has come down a little bit. Eggs are now $10 to $15 a dozen. That's what Biden did to us. With Trump, they were $1.99 a dozen, and a gallon of gas was $1.99 a gallon. So what these elitist Democrat environmental wackos like that roomful there today, and it's really sad because you can see the elder, you can see they've been made sick. They believe that they're going to die. They believe that the whole world is going to die and their Portland green life is going to die unless they just shut down all the fossil fuel, all the train cars, all the oil rail cars. They've got to shut down everything or everything's going to be dead because they've been told that. Rep AOC told that we had 7 years to live. And young women stepped up in her public forum and go, we've got to eat the babies. We got to eat the babies. She said we got to eat the babies because of the climate crisis. She said that. This sick little gal, probably against the Zenith oil train cars if you asked her, at Rep AOC's forum. Rep AOC never corrected her. Never said, no, please don't eat your baby. No, please don't eat the babies. We don't need to eat the babies. No, please don't do that. That's not what she said. Why? Because they need to feed into that fear and hysteria where the young ladies actually believe they need to kill their children, not have children, and yes, eat the babies because of climate change and pending doom from cow farts. Fact. Representative AOC with this Sunrise Movement, who was testifying there at this Portland City Council link that I'm rambling about and ranting now about. Sunrise Movement, who they have no clue. Maybe they know, maybe they don't know. Those people were infested with intelligence that in 2021 were ready, 2020, were ready to, with maps underneath the Capitol at Washington, D.C., to go into the tunnels for a coup, a revolutionary coup, because they thought Trump was going to win in 2020. And we have that on video because Millie Weaver with Stop the PSYOPs, and she actually did an expose. That was one of her movies. Was it Stop the PSYOPs? I think it was Stop the PSYOPs. And then she did a Sunrise Movement where she infiltrated into these Zoom meetings of hundreds of people all talking about what they were going to do to set things on fire and to take over the Capitol and do violence, because that's where they're at now. Psychologically, they've been programmed that if they don't get violent and blow things up with arson, hundreds of arsonists in California right now. We've seen dozens of arson in Oregon, hundreds of arsonists up in Canada with arrests. So part of it is the agenda. Go set fire. The only way we can stop these fascists, you got to burn and blow everything up. Yeah. And they go out and do it. Another part of it is from people that are sick from fear and hysteria. They may not have been told of the plan. They didn't know it was trust the plan to burn the country down. They just copycat. They just go with it from their mental illness that came from the programming. And it's a direct programming that Chairman Green, Commissioner Green of Portland City Council, Chairman Green, like Mao, Marxist Maoist fuck. They hate capitalism. So you don't believe me about that? Let's take a look at one of their websites. Okay. So so I guess I gotta go back to click, see if I can push that out. This is 350 PDX. Okay. So they're the ones that are pushing a lot of this. And this has been their campaign for years. I've talked with these activists since 2015, 2016. So this is their website here. Fossil fuel resistance. Okay. And this right here, if you can see that, I hope you can see that. Yeah, it looks like you should be able to see that. Right up and through here is that's the St. John's Bridge, and that looks like it's probably the Steel Bridge. So they're looking back. These little people here are people that are humans, that are not well. They're mentally ill. They believe if they don't dangle down here and risk their lives, that the earth is going to die and everyone's going to be killed. And it's irreversible if they don't put their lives in jeopardy, setting fires, blowing things up, and dangling off of bridges to do actions. Okay, and so I think this was the Mosquito Fleet. There was a group called the Mosquito Fleet that was all kayakers and stuff and coming out through there. And I actually went to just do film. I went to these events to say, hey, let's just shoot some video. I don't need to lecture. I don't need to fight anybody. I don't need to argue about anything. I'm here as an objective observer. I'm going to film you guys. We're going to get some press and we'll talk about it. Okay. And so that's where I was there. And that's why I was shooting video back in the day for years. I still do that. I don't need to argue with anyone, especially in an event or an action. People are not well. The last thing I need to do is instigate and agitate. It's pretty fucking stupid. I go into an event looking to blend in. I want to camouflage. I don't need to be standing out and arguing about dipshit. This is from their website, in order to stop the climate crisis from getting worse, we have to keep the remaining fossil fuel reserves in the ground. The Pacific Northwest is currently facing many active proposals for new fossil fuel infrastructure that, if built, would lock us into the fossil fuel economy and its carbon pollution for decades to come. Your future will be gone, my words. The fossil fuel resistant team seeks to stop new fossil fuel projects from being built in Portland or to service the Portland metro area, and to engage in regional fights to stop all fossil fuel infrastructure in the Pacific Northwest and beyond. These guys link into globalists. It's a global agenda and clearly national. Do you live in the blast zone? So this was a trigger word we hear in the listening session at Portland City Council. It's repeated over and over and again. All these little anti-Zenith oil bots, these little computer bots, they all read a script. They're all aging boomers that, they're old hippies that are on their way out, and they want to contribute, and they love the green, and they see the changes in Portland and Oregon and the country, and they're triggered. They're not well. If they're not on medications, they should be. I wouldn't criticize them for being on meds, but I'm not a doctor, but yeah, they need something. That's for sure. They need some crisis counseling because they're triggered and they think they're going to be dead. So this blast zone, I live in the blast zone. I'm in District 2. I'm in District 3. I live in the blast zone, and my life is in danger. We're going to die. My kids are going to die. And you just hear these fucking idiots clamoring about this crisis that's been embedded like MK Ultra into their brains. They have been programmed, and they're not well. Now, the elderly and the boomers, it's another level of, all right, you guys have got nothing to do. You're retired. You got a bunch of money. You don't like gambling. You're not drinking. You quit smoking dope. And, you're over the hippies. You got a Grateful Dead sticker on the back of your Cadillac now. And it's that's a different thing. Now, the youth, they're triggered in different ways. The youth are triggered in different ways because they're actually becoming aggressive and violent in their actions. The anarcho-communists are fighting capitalism. Portland is capitalism. Oregon is capitalism. The country is capitalist. We're free market. You could argue, well, we're not really free, bro. The market's not really free. Okay, right on. There's an argument that says, I don't want to get into that debate with you. I was on Instagram with some anonymous, good grief, but it's interesting to go back and forth. It kind of gets my brain going, and I can do a little debate and a little crisis counseling, because that's kind of my approach. It's kind of trying to talk these people off of the climate change ledge, because they're on the edge of the bridge, ready to jump. And as you could see there in that picture, at the top that I just showed you there at 350 PDX, who testified and who's pushing all of this anti-capitalist fossil fuel rhetoric. They've told everyone they're in a blast zone. What those red lines are, this is a railroad, okay? That's all it is. It's a railroad. So if you're near a railroad, here's Portland, I was in Park Rose. I was surrounded by railroads. Not only was I surrounded by railroads, I heard all the Portland jets taking off. So here's Portland. Park Rose is right here. Here's Portland International Airport. Park Rose right here. It's got railroads, 1, 2, 3, 4, all of them. And then we got this. And then we got the airports and the jets and all the planes and all of that. Okay. And it's pretty serious in Park Rose. You could hear all the trains, you hear them screeching, you hear them grinding. And if you think you're going to die, hearing those trains triggers a near-death experience. It really does. It's unfortunate to say that, but people that believe fossil fuels are killing them and that the train car is going to tip over any minute now, because they've been programmed to believe any minute now, an exploding train car is going to splash gasoline all over their dogs, all over their cats, and probably their children and new BMW. Okay. The oil inside rail cars is highly pressurized, and the trains can derail and explode. So you see there up, it says, use the map above to see if you live in the blast zone, because you're going to get blasted to holy fuck. Right? This is them. This is their programming. And trains can derail and explode, causing dangerous repercussions to our local communities. And they repeat over and over again that it's only the communities of color and the indigenous people that are going to be affected the most by this. Everybody else is safe, right? Like, what the fuck kind of bullshit is that? First of all, Portland doesn't have a community of one color in one neighborhood. It probably rarely really did. You got to go back to the 80s to actually Columbia Villa and circle a couple neighborhoods and say, oh, Alberta and Killingsworth, that's the hood. You got to go back 50 years. Well, at least 30, 35, 40. And I was here for all of it, so I know what I'm talking about. But it's all been gentrified now. Everyone's been dispersed. There's no Chinatown community. I mean, Chinatown downtown is really more of, it's like, it's the old school relics, like a museum. That's the way I look at it, because you don't find very many Chinese anywhere down Chinatown, downtown. All right. You're going to call something China. There needs to be Chinese businesses, Chinese owners, Chinese this, Chinese that. Now, granted, they're the Bill Native community. I don't want to minimize the wonderful Chinese communities. There's the Chinese Gardens, Lansu down there. There is property owners, the Nato family, great wealthy pioneers of old school Portland. I don't want to minimize any of that. Okay. Don't get me wrong. But I'm trying to make a point that there isn't one little community of color next to all those rail cars that's going to be more affected than the whole goddamn community of Portland and Oregon. Okay, so just shut the F up about that. Many living near these rail lines may not even be aware of these potential dangers, and should be a derailment or collision happen, few local governments even have the equipment or trained personnel to deal with an accident involving large amounts of such volatile materials. If you live in the blast zone, you're going to die soon. My words. Your voice in this fight really matters. You have a personal stake in this issue, and the city council should personally hear from you. Use the phone numbers and email addresses above to share your concerns with the Portland City Council. Stop Zenith! And here it is. So they go right in through here. But when you click on their campaigns, the reason I gave you all that background is, it is on one of the campaigns. About us, or let's go to climate justice. So you click on climate justice, today's dirty energy. I'm looking for trigger words. Oh, here it is right there. It's communities of color, indigenous people. Today's dirty energy economy directs the biggest benefits to a small, wealthy elite and the biggest disadvantage to the rest of us, especially the poor and the working classes, communities of color, indigenous peoples. That's just shit framing. Fuck you guys for saying that shit about Portland. Not only is it a system of planetary destruction, they believe Earth is going to be exploding soon. The dirty energy paradigm is racist, imperialist, and oppressive. But its alternative, a renewable energy future, need not be. It's crazy jargon. And when you read this and go through this, it is crazy fucking jargon. And now, where does it? I'm looking for the trigger words. I'm looking for capitalism. Climate justice means working at the intersections of capitalism and its efforts on environmental degradation and the racial, social, and economic inequalities it perpetuates. Read that. Read that out loud to yourself. Let those words resonate. This is what they believe. This is what they're programming their young people with. This is what this is the rhetoric. It's insane. That's mentally ill. Mentally ill. My God, none of it's true. A fundamental proposition of climate change is that those who are the least responsible for climate change suffer its gravest consequences, both within and between countries. Climate justice relies on concepts of environmental and social justice, along with the human rights approach to address the effects of climate change. I can't even read any more of this, but if you can, please go through this and read what these folks say. Okay? You have to know the enemy before you can understand the resolution. All right? It's a pretty big deal. So, all right, what do we have? 40 minutes? God, man, I am so long-winded. Jesus, it's just insane how much I can just talk on and on and on. Let me wrap this up. I don't want to go longer than an hour. I'd really like to just wrap it up right through. So let me go click. What do I want to say? Anything else? Let me just talk before I do a conclusionary wrap up. Let me talk a little bit about some of these other articles that I have here. Okay, so this is Canadian crude oil. There it is. So let me go back on. Oh, it's starting to do the little spin like it's getting it retarded on me. Canadian crude oil is going by rail to Portland before shipping off to Asia. Okay. Canadian oil has found a new route. This is 2018, by the way. Was it OPV? Yeah, OPV. Canadian oil has found a new route to Asia. It's moving by rail through Washington to a shipping terminal in Portland. In the long run, Canada wants to expand its Trans Mountain pipeline to move oil from the Alberta tar sands west to British Columbia, and from there onto ships that would travel the Salish Sea and then into Asia. But that expansion has yet to begin, and oil producers have instead begun shipping that oil by rail to Portland and loaded it onto vessels for export. Okay, so this is what the anxiety was. We're going back here almost 10 years, 8 years. Portland exported more than 240,000 barrels of oil to China in January, according to the report by Bloomberg. Portland exported more than 240,000, 3 zeros, of oil to China in January. 1 month. I've never heard those numbers. Is that true? If that's true, that's amazing. But it's far from clear that oil producers see oil by rail and the Willamette and the Columbia Rivers as part of their long-term strategy. Quote, my read on all this is that it can't be a large new route to get oil to Asia. What this looks like is a test shipment, said Clark Williams-Derry, who studies energy markets for the Sightline Institute, a Seattle-based think tank. Williams-Derry said shipping oil overseas through Portland is not economical. It's likely an attempt to establish a new market. State regulators say the oil is moving through the Zenith Energy terminal on the Willamette River. The facility was an asphalt plant until 4 years ago, when it was purchased by ARC Logistics and quietly began accepting shipments, lurking in the darkness of night. They quietly began accepting shipments of crude oil by rail. It was acquired by Zenith in December. Granted, this is an old article. With us? Follow me? It is the only facility in Portland accepting those Canadian crude shipments and transloading them. Oregon Department of Transportation spokeswoman Shelley Snow said, the agency's hazardous materials inspectors are aware of the shipments and regularly inspect the area. Train shipments of Canadian oil have been moving through the Northwest since as early as 2015. But the use of those shipments to facilitate exports to China appears to be a new development. Overall, oil train shipments have dipped after reaching unprecedented levels between 2013 and 2015. Okay, so this is interesting reflection back, right? Because this is years back. No Kinder Morgan pipeline. I've actually been a part of anti-LNG pipelines coming through that they wanted to do through the Salmon Huckleberry Wilderness, right below Mount Hood. I'm not cool with the pipelines. I'm not even cool with TransCanada pipeline. I'm not cool with these guys shipping this stuff from Canada. I think Canada is a menace. I think it's communist, Marxist, totalitarian. I personally don't want to make communist, Marxist, totalitarian oil companies any wealthier than they already are. I already view them as a serious threat to our sovereignty and free market here in North America. Or, excuse me, they are North America. We need to, that's probably a part of why one could argue we need to absorb Canada to prevent this kind of craziness. That doesn't stop it. I don't know. At least we could call it ours instead of making money for the Marxists. The pipeline was a topic of conversation Friday during a gathering of leaders of British Columbia, Washington, Oregon, California, to discuss regional cooperation about climate change. The trigger, climate change, which is really weather change. Climate change only happens with long-term changes in the weather patterns. We're not seeing long-term weather changes in the patterns for climate, okay? That's bullshit, bunk. Fuck you, Al Gore, and the rest of you psychophants that can't critically think that through. Washington Governor Jay Inslee, fuck you, Inslee, who's going into Idaho and leaving finally leaving Washington, total douche, used the forum to express his support for British Columbia's resistance to the expanded pipeline. Granted, I'm not a big fan of the pipelines, okay? And that's why I just admitted to what I just admitted. So let's see here. Let's just try to speed up a little bit more. We've got Canadian pipelines. Here's this one. Share this tab instead. View tab in YouTube. Okay, so there we are. Portland Terminal. So this is kind of brings it together. This is what the listening session was about. Zenith Energy needs a DEQ air quality permit to continue legally doing what they're doing. And what some of the testimony was saying today is that they've been doing this stuff, operating business illegally because they don't have a permit. I got to stay hydrated when I'm flapping my gums like this real fast, okay? So this is about the Portland terminal. Zenith Energy operates a fuel storage facility in Northwest Portland. As the end of 2024, 66% of our contracted storage capacity supports renewable fuels. Wait, what? Hello? What? Environmentalists? Hello? Anybody home? 66% of our contracted storage capacity supports renewable fuels. This is Zenith Energy. Renewables. Isn't that what you guys have been fighting for 15 years? I remember hearing that in protest for about 15 years. Yeah, I did. Terminal in Oregon, likely all the Pacific Northwest. The terminal stores primary renewable diesel. Keep in mind, the word renewable is a very palatable, it could really mean a whole bunch of things, but it's the environmental oppression that's jammed these guys into using trigger words like renewable when it's really kind of a strange way of saying or calling something, especially diesel. Sustainable aviation fuel. What? Ding, 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 ding. Aviation fuel is a huge issue for me. That's a whole nother video, and it needs to be unpacked. Component and biodiesel. Zenith is the only terminal in Oregon storing SAF compound, sustainable aviation fuel. What the fuck's in the sustainable aviation fuel, Zenith? Okay. What's in the fuel? What's in the air fuel, Zenith? This is the component that's getting lost in all the hysteria and complaints and pressure of compliance for Zenith Energy. Nobody's talking about the aluminum and all the other hundreds of chemicals and compounds in that jet fuel that's raining down on Portland every day, all over the country, all over our forests every day. Aluminum nanoparticles. Okay? That's what's in jet fuel. So let's have Zenith explain what's all the chemicals. How about we get some samples of your sustainable renewable diesel, huh, Zenith? Yeah, we're going to test it out ourselves. And we're going to see what kind of chemicals are in that and what's raining down on all of our agriculture gardens and children and dogs and cats and forests here in Oregon. Eh? Okay. See? Now, I don't want to help these goons because they're triggered and they're against capitalism and they sound like lunatics, and you lose me. A lifelong environmentalist and activist. Is that painting going to fall down? My chair's wobbling. I hear the painting ready to collapse on me. That painting comes down and bounces off the top of my head. That's going to be the live stream that goes down in history. To help the region achieve its carbon reduction goals, Zenith is replacing 100% of our crude oil storage with renewable fuels. Do you know why they're making these concessions? Do you have any idea, any clue? Because of Commissioner Dan Ryan. Commissioner Dan Ryan from the previous city council that these little dipshits down there at Columbia River Keepers, and Caleb, and I hate that fucking guy. He's such a douche. And all the rest of these other little yammers down there at City Hall, they're going to attack city council. Commissioner Dan Ryan negotiated with pressure these concessions. The concessions on zenithterminals.com that I'm reading right now came from Commissioner Dan Ryan and his work. So give the boys some props. Zenith Renewable Fuel Transition is spelled out in Portland's Land Use Compatibility Statement, which was granted in October 2022 and determined that the terminal complies with the city's 2035 comprehensive plan according to the WEF overlords and the smart city redo. No, those are my words, but right? When you start seeing Agenda 25, Agenda 35, that's what you should think about. So by the way, this right here, this is all sitting on the Willamette River. This is what Zenith did. Here's their train cars. Here's all the oil cars here, right? They're all stacked up. That's what those are. And then they're kind of spooky. And when you're down there on the Willamette River, you start thinking about, and everyone's all triggered and freaked out during the listening session, all their testimony. It's a talking point, is the earthquake. We're sitting on a fault line. Everyone's white-knuckled is the phrase, which is probably racist and xenophobic to even say. So strike that. Everyone's really, really freaked out, grabbing on the steering wheel for near death that the earthquake's coming. We've been told it's coming. It's going to come. Are we going to survive it? Are those tanks going to survive? Zenith says they will. They said today that it's going to survive a 9.0. I highly doubt that. Nothing in Portland's going to survive, including all the bridges, including all the brick, mortar, mason structures. All that shit comes down with a 9.0 underneath Portland. Period. It doesn't matter what the fuck you guys are all yapped up about DEQ air purifiers, air permits, DEQ air permits. Doesn't matter. The 9 comes, it's over. It's going to be one big smart city rebuilt to our demise. And we don't want that, okay? But we can't live our lives like that, all right? We can't live like that. We can't yammer about and fear and make ourselves get cancer from anxiety and fear and psychological disorders and personality disorders because we're scared to death of the earthquake that could come any day now. They've been saying that for 20 years, by the way. Zenith Renewable Fuel Transition is spelled out in Portland's land use. Okay, let's see here. So they go on to say what they're doing, all these great things they're doing, storage removal. They've reduced 8 rail car spots from unloading crude oil and will disassemble and remove 30 storage tanks, greatly reducing our number of storage tanks at the facility. All of these concessions came from the pressure from the community, but with Commissioner Dan Ryan and the city council, everyone said everything was done in secret. And, oh my God, this is horrible. They're going to blow us up. And we're all in a train car zone. The catchphrases. My God. But these are the concessions. So they've made good faith agreements. Okay? They have made good faith agreements. And I think that there should be some credibility there. I really do. And we need fuels. We need fuels to get cheaper than what Biden and Kamala did. Okay. We need them to, we need the price to come down. It helps. The essence of the crux, if I could condense it, we help the poor communities of color, indigenous communities of Portland and Oregon the most with cheap fossil fuels. That's where we're at right now. They got to get the kids to school. They got small businesses they're trying to maybe launch or keep alive. They need fuel back to $1.99. That is the greatest tax on the poorest people of Oregon and the country, is when gas goes up to $5, $6, $7, $8. If we don't have a major supplier bringing us supply of fossil fuel here, like Zenith Energy, it could be somebody else if we got other guys. There's some other people, some other contracts. I don't like monopolies. I sure in the fuck don't like Canadian crude. I don't like anything to do with Canada. So you could win me over and a whole bunch of other independents by making that argument. Canada and Marxists and all these douchebags, let's keep the fuel here for Portland and let's get that price of the fuel. With the more abundance, it's supply and demand, the more fossil fuel we have, the cheaper it's going to be. And that is the greatest benefit and blessing and tax relief, gas tax relief, that you could give communities of color and low income, middle income, and even upper income. Okay? The wealthy don't cringe and stop driving their cars because gasoline is $6 and $7 a gallon. It's us, the poor folks, or the lower incomes, or even the middle incomes that don't drive as much, don't take the vacations. They're spending money on gas instead of spending money on their children. That's a crime. That's a crime against humanity, in my opinion. That's what these environmentalists are doing to us. It's not the fossil fuels that are doing that. The fossil fuel companies are abundantly bringing those costs down. And that we proved that with Trump. Trump had gas at $1.99. It hadn't been that cheap since Jimmy Carter fucked it up. 40 years. 40-year gasoline low with the Orange Man. That's Orange Man good, not Orange Man bad. Okay, so this one here, East. Let me take a look here. Are we on that? You guys still with me? Okay, here we go. Hang on. So I'll click back over here. East Palestine, Ohio. So this train derailment, this was a catastrophe that was man-made by the Biden administration, the DOD and Secretary Pete, who's trying to take credit for being this great transportation secretary. The biggest environmental fuck-up in American history was East Palestine, Ohio. It was the derailment, yes, but it was not exploding until they packed it with the explosives and blew it up. Long pause. Yes, they blew up the most toxic, poison train cars because they wanted to do a controlled burn, thinking it would be safer to get it out of there if they just burned it all on all the poor communities of East Palestine, Ohio. The wind blew it all over through Pennsylvania and the whole region. Cancer is now spiking, and we've only begun to see what they've done with the cancer spiking, exploding this train car. It didn't need to be exploded. You don't need to pack a toxic train car full of explosives with dynamite and blow it up, as they did. Go down here to the derailment, and it says security footage from it's getting on. Security footage from business in Salem, Ohio. So they're just saying here, this is the smoke rises from the derailment. February 3rd. I forgot that was my daughter's birthday when they did that. They lit that thing up on my daughter's birthday. Isn't that amazing? The timing on all that. February 3rd, 2023, 2 years ago, 51 cars derailed on the east side of East Palestine near the border with Pennsylvania. 49 of the cars ended up in derailment pile, which caught fire and burned for several days. No, they were set on fire. They didn't catch fire until they were exploded, and the chemicals were poured into pools and then lit on fire and burned. Of the 51 derailed cars, 11 were tank cars that were dumped 100,000 U.S. gallons of hazardous materials, including vinyl chloride, benzene residue, and butyl alkylate. Vinyl chloride is some of the most toxic chemical on Earth that you could possibly want to blow up all over a community and all over Earth. It's like setting a nuke up. Biden nuked Ohio with Secretary Pete Buttigieg. This is what people are worried about. They're worried about train derailments, and they're worried about incompetent government blowing shit up. So this one here, I got to click on that. You guys see that? This is out at the Columbia Gorge, okay? This is Mosier. And let's see here. I'm clicking back to see. I thought I had... There was a Wikipedia page for Mosier. And this here This was, they had a couple of cars, so I think this was sabotage. Now, that's one of the arguments that I'm making, is that I'm not really worried as much about the train cars and what happens from there as I am. I mean, it's a concern. Environmentally, nobody wants this. I'm not saying I want that. But what I'm concerned about is the mentally ill people that we hear testifying in listening sessions, and the anarcho-communists that continue to set fires and blow up facilities all along the West Coast, arson in Malibu, arson all around, arson at Monterey Bay and the EV, arson, arson, arson. These guys are deranged, and it's sabotage. Sabotage is what I'm concerned about, and it's sabotage that's coming to our theater and community. So it's not just the train cars that are the concern. It's what these dipshits are trying to do against capitalism, against fossil fuels, and with the brainwashing that they have been told and are convinced that this is the end of the earth and life as they know it, unless they sabotage the train cars and blow them up to make an environmental catastrophe so they can stop all the fossil fuels coming through the gorge or wherever they want to target. California. Follow me? This is what I'm concerned about, is sabotaging. They're not well. The younger generation, the Zoomers, are unhealthy. There's a huge chunk of the millennials that aren't healthy. And when you're dealing with anarcho-communists that hate capitalism, and you have now seated chairman, Marxist, Maoist chairman Green and the likes, Angelita's right there too. She puts her little glasses on and makes her look like a librarian. And no, I wasn't blowing up the federal courthouse. No, Commissioner Hardesty did what I didn't. I wasn't there with her, and we blew it up for months. No, that wasn't me. I'm a librarian, and I'm here to act sophisticated and elderly and pay no attention to what I did in Commissioner Hardesty's office with my gaggle of anarcho-communists killing people on the streets of Portland because we don't like capitalism and the orange man and fossil fuels and Republicans. We've got to destroy everything is what they did. Now we have these lunatics seated on Portland City Council. That's the greatest threat to our community. Not just the train cars, which rarely derail and create this catastrophe. And in this case with Moser, I apologize for not having that right on the fast click. And it's probably buried on my history too. Well, I can do, bear with me. It is significant just to talk about it because I brought it up. I just showed you a picture of it. Mosier. We've got Grandma Nancy lives there. That derailment affected Grandma Nancy directly. She lives at the Dalles. It affected her water supply. She knows people that, I don't want to say anything other without it being, I was going to say something dramatic, but like anything I haven't just said wasn't fucking dramatic, right? I know. All right. Well, let me just do a quick, let's just do a quick one. Mosier derailment. I had it and I was reading through it, so it's like it was right there. I see the Friends of Columbia Gorge. It's a talking point. It came up. A reason this is significant is because it came up at this listening session. All right, so let me double check, make sure it all clicked and we're still rolling. Is it still got juice? Is it acting retarded and spinning? And have I been shut off by the powers that be? Has the World Economic Forum closed me down? Good God. I can't believe they allow me to run my mouth for as long as I am. 26, Union Pacific train. Oh, wait. Is this? Yeah. Is this the right one? I think it's the right one. So this is here. It shows it's on fire. Now, I don't think they set it on fire, but maybe they did. The weird thing about this one on Wikipedia, or I thought it was kind of strange, is they didn't do an investigation because nobody was injured or dead. And I thought, boy, that's kind of weird. So this was June 3rd. Another three. God, there's so many threes in my world. 2016, a Union Pacific train derailed in the Columbia River Gorge near Mosier, Oregon. 16 of the 96 cars derailed after the train's emergency brake system, about 18 cars back from the engines, engaged. So all of a sudden, the emergency brake system made everything get much, much worse. That's what made these cars spin, flip, and ignite. It was actually the braking system, right? If it would have just derailed, maybe I'm misunderstanding that. I am not a train engineer, so I shouldn't say anything if I don't really, not sure. By 5 p.m., large explosions were coming from the tankers. All of the tank cars were modern CPC 1232 design. Interstate 84 in Oregon was closed. Washington State Route 14 being recommended as a detour. Sewage treatment plant was shut down. An oil sheen was seen on the Columbia River by the following morning. 2 days after the crash, residents were allowed to return to their homes. And the community then passed on an emergency motion asking Union Pacific to remove all oil from the damaged cars before resuming the use of the tracks. Union Pacific pushed the damaged cars out of the way and limited the train speed to 10 miles per hour. 42,000 U.S. gallons of oil were spilled. Most of it was consumed by fire, or much of it was consumed by fire. Some went into the Columbia River, and 10,000 U.S. gallons were recovered from the city's sewage treatment plant. Boy, that's a weird twist. I mean, so this right here, this is the weird thing I was talking about. In response to the derailment and lack of investigation, back up one step. The National Transportation Safety Board declined to investigate due to the lack of injuries or fatalities. And early information gathered after the incident occurred indicated there was not a significant safety issue. What? It derailed. That seems like a safety issue. In response to the derailment and the lack of investigation by the National Transportation Safety Board, Oregon Senators Jeffrey Merkley and Ronnie Wyden introduced the Mandate Oil Spill Inspections and Emergency Rules Mosier Act, which calls for a moratorium on oil train traffic after major wrecks and return the Department of Transportation to reduce the amount of volatile gases in the crude oil those trains have been hauling. The bill would die in committee. So I don't know if that was a good or a bad thing on that bill, to be honest. I mean, it sounds like it's overreactionary. It sounds like that exact kind of staging sabotage. I actually believe that Mosier was an act of sabotage. And it's not just it is only because I don't have any inside information. I mean, it's like, well, what are you trying to say, bro? You got something to say, then say it. I don't. And it's so I don't want to be like that. But so I have to click on can I come back to full screen? Okay. So I don't know. I mean, but it's like that weird intuition that all these trains have been running that route for decades and decades and decades, never had any problems before on the Columbia River route. Okay. And the way that it unraveled is it felt like sabotage, but I don't have evidence. I don't have anybody that said we did it, man. We did it. But there was some sort of a story or something that said a bolt was loose. Like it was weird, but how did I get that information if there wasn't an investigation? Was there an investigation? Was there just like casual? I mean, it was like, how did it happen? How does that shit happen? I also think there was sabotage with a car. I think it was just a year or two I should look that one up. Right here in Portland. Wasn't a train car, wasn't an oil car, but with all of this heated debate and the hysterics that's triggered these young minds in Portland, very, very vulnerable. They're like clay, like soft clay. And I'm not trying to be minimizing or condescending, but they're like soft, vulnerable minds that have been told that it's the end of the world and the end of their life if we don't stop fossil fuels. And there's no consideration to keeping the price low for small business. There's no consideration. There was one testimony today that one dipshit mocked him. It was a young guy from Star Oil, and he I wasn't sure he was from the community of color. I'm not sure exactly if he said where he was from or if that even really matters. They're the ones that make that matter. They're the ones that say they're doing all this and that because it's for the indigenous, it's for the tribes, and gotta think about everybody, yeah. What? Jesus. But Star Oil testified, and he says, you know what? We couldn't get diesel fuel for weeks or days. I think he said days. Might have said a week or two. He said that directly connecting to the Biden mandates, the mRNA jab mandates, and the supply chain that shut down from all of that hysteria that was Democrats whooped up to create the coup. I believe it was a bioweapon coup. And that we could debate that forever, right? It seems pretty clear to me, and I got a lot of evidence on that one, but not the video. It's not what I'm talking about. 1111. I've been talking for too long, but I lost my train of thought there. So the Star Oil kid, and you got to hear his testimony because he's the only one. There's only one that said, you know what? When the supply chains go down, we couldn't do business. We couldn't get the fuel to people, and it was really scary. We didn't know if we were going to have jobs, and people were really scared because they didn't have the diesel to do what they wanted to do and supply. So you've got those fuels. That's heating oil. It's not just the airplanes. It's not just for trucking and everything, all small business. See, that's my angle, being a small business guy my entire life since I was a teenager. I mean, I was shining shoes at 14 years old. We had a beautiful marble stand with green leather chairs and brass footings. It was wonderful. My mother had built that with one of her husbands. I think it was the second husband, Jones, a guy. But we had these stands. We had these shoe shine stands they're really nice, not just like a little box with a little poor kid. These were actually like really nice. They look really, really nice. I've never seen shoe shine stands like that, like we had, and that I took over it. I mean, that was my gift from mom after they unraveled and had to blah blah blah. You know how it goes when it's business separation and marriage is dissolved. Oh boy, hey, things get ugly. But I took over. And then I had to get rid of this Sicilian dude that was making me nervous, and I took over and just ran it completely myself. And my whole point was there. I don't need to go into that. That's a video all in itself. The shoe shine stand days. I was a teenager, small business. So the whole small business, I'm a small business guy my whole life. I work with neighborhood associations, business associations. That's, I've had art galleries, art collectives, on and on and on. It's small business are my people. They're my people. And it's the lifeblood of any community. Small, large, national level. It's small business that keeps it going. These big box guys, they're always going to make the buck. They're always going to be there. They're always going to be able, or close and just fire everybody, and still they're going to be fine. It's the small business people that is the backbone of a local economy and keeping our sovereignty. And it's the creative expression of a community is the small business. Those are the people that get wiped out. Now, let's just say that you shut down Zenith train cars and we can't get any fuel into Portland. Do you have any idea the ramifications, the ripple effects that would be in Portland? No, you don't, because you've been brainwashed. These environmentalists have been brainwashed into thinking that that's the only option that they have, is they've got to shut it all down. And as I've said many times, several times here in this rant, blow it up, burn it up, do it all. They've been programmed that it's the end times. The Democrats have done this to them because they're using them like a political football for leverage. They're just using them, just like they use migrants, just like they use the spotted owl or the sage grouse or Eastern Oregon or the smelt fish in California. It's all just a political football. They don't give a flying about any of it. They're just, the objective is the objective, and that's where they're going, which is really unsustainable lithium batteries, which were reliant on cheap labor from China or Indonesia, all these other different. We're not doing it here. The unions, we can't make this stuff cheap enough. The unions are going to want $100 an hour. We don't make shit here anymore, the manufacturer, because the unions drove it all out. Now, that's another thing. Don't send me any hate mail. Send the hate mail to downtown Commissioner Green, Portland, Oregon, 1212 Southwest 4th. Send all the hate mail there, not me. But I jest. So is that everything I wanted to say? So in conclusion, I, as a lifelong environmentalist, backpacked and camped all of the Rocky Mountains up here in Idaho, Montana, and through Oregon. I love the wilderness. I love nature. I'm an environmentalist. I'm a conservationist. I'm just more conservative now, because the conservatives are the common sense conservationists. The conservatives of Oregon, we're going to step up and we're going to become the new environmentalists that the Democrats tried to be but failed. Fact. That's what we can do if we can get the conservatives here in Oregon, in the Pacific Northwest, but especially Oregon. Oregon is so prime and ripe for a conservative Republican environmental movement. Big time. And some of those discussions are what we've just had here with the Zenith listening session that the city council did. So I applaud them for getting that out. They want to be transparent. That was a big riff, is that it was in order to actually get to advance the Zenith car agenda, which I support. I actually support Zenith Energy. I don't support the Canada dynamic. And people say, bro, you can't support Zenith. If you're going to, that is supporting the Canadians. Okay. Then we have some common ground with the Canadian projects. I don't like the tar sands. I don't like any of that shit. We don't need to be doing we don't need to carry water or carry oil or carry jet fuel. That's the other thing I want to finish on. Jet fuel. Carry any of those fuels in train cars or ships for Canada. We do it for America. America first means our domestic fuel supply is for America first. We don't ship it out to China. We don't ship it out to the corrupt European Union. Fuck that European Union. Those guys are shooting themselves in the foot with their own climate change policy lunacy that's killing people right now, and they're freezing to death in Germany right now. They're not talking about it. They don't want to talk about all the people they're killing because they can't afford heating oil right now in the middle of the winter. That's happening right now, just like that's happening all over America. Unfortunately, people are dying from this cold. It hasn't even been discussed yet because the cold hasn't lifted. But we're going to have a whole bunch of dead people from this Arctic cold. It's global freezing. Global freezing is the new Al Gore warming. That's my one-liner, because it's not warming, it's global freezing. We have 50-year record of cold temperatures, 87, 90 minus on the Arctic, whipping around. And when that thing wobbles, the polar vortex, one could argue the intense solar cycle 25, sending the electromagnetic, the CMEs, that could be affecting it. Could be. But it could just be that that is cold and we're going into a colder trend, which we have for 3 or 4 or 5 years. We have been trending cooler. Now, people want to debate that. It is debatable. Why? Because summer comes and it gets hot and everybody goes, see, it's summer and it's hot now. So it's not cold, you idiot. It's warm again. It's global warming again. It's summer. Yeah. And because Death Valley gets hot. Yeah, that's global warming. It's Death Valley at 130. Every summer, it's the desert and it's Death Valley for a reason. You go there to die. Don't do that. Don't go to Death Valley in California and die in the desert at 130 degrees. I'm not your counselor. I'm just trying to be a friend. Give you some friendly advice. Okay? So now the jet fuel, that is a whole nother video in itself. And the jet fuel needs to be unpacked. And it needs to be unpacked for a number of reasons. All of this chemtrails, all of this make America healthy again, the MAHA agenda, all of this is coming, this discussion is coming down and policy is coming down the pipeline. If we're smart, we can advance some policy down the pipeline to change what the commercial jet fuel is. Now, Professor Jim Lee, climateviewer.org, I believe it's .org instead of .com, but Climate Viewer, Professor Jim, I call him Professor Lee. I don't even know if he likes that or not, but I'm not asking him. I'm his student, like a lot of people are. The guy's a genius. When you see his website, you'll understand. He tells me, Professor Lee tells me, no, you're wrong about JP8. Now, I'm partially right because JP8 was used. I think it's still used. I'm finding websites that it's still used. It just may not be in the commercial airline industry. They may have modified and tweaked that. JP8 is different. That's what changed. That's why the clouds have gone silver, in my opinion. This is the geoengineering that Doomsday Dane Wigington. He's got a big poster of Al Gore up on the wall. It's like, oh my God, my climate. He's global warming guru, Al Gore. And so Doomsday Dane Wigington, who made a pretty good movie called The Dimming. You may have heard that. If not, check it out. You can take a look at The Dimming. Keep in mind that Dane is an Al Gore psychophant. He believes that we're going into global warming. We've only got to, he sounds a lot like Rep AOC saying we got to eat the babies. And yeah, maybe we should eat the babies. Well, don't have any babies, that's for sure. And so then we'll collapse and well, wait, what? That kind of thinking where it just doesn't add up when you say it out loud. Please don't eat the babies. Please do have babies. And please don't eat your babies. Okay? We don't need that because we're not in the climate crisis as they're trying to say. All right? I believe it's more like Snowpiercer. You ever heard of that movie? The late Mike Morales, another one of my Professor Morales, or he's not quite the professor, but he was a guru. Let's call him a guru. Rest in peace, Mike Morales. I hope his wife is doing all right. She was surviving a car crash, and then he dies, gets cancer all up in his throat, and then he dies. God, I really do hope his wife is doing it. I think it was Sally or Sharon or... God, I haven't thought about her for a long time. I hope she's all right. I hope Mrs. Morales is all right. Back to my point is that I digress is that the Mike Morales was talking about how they switched the jet fuels. And when that happened, that created this aluminum nanoparticles because it's loaded with aluminum now on top of hundreds of other chemicals. Calcium's also in that. So when it's not special poisoning. People are tripping out and freaking out saying that the government's spraying us. Now, there is some different, there's all kind, I'm not going to deny it. Check out Climate Viewer. Don't listen to me. Listen to Professor Lee. Read with your own eyes on the patents. It's not a conspiracy. When they got patents for this shit, it's science. It's not a conspiracy anymore. All right? Follow me? Check out climateviewer.org, Professor Lee. And that type of dynamic, it does happen, but that's not the main factor. The main factor, it could be, and I'm not sure, I haven't put this together, it could be this renewable diesel. It could be this sustainable diesel direction. that they're mixing in that's loaded with the aluminums or chemicals. Now, maybe it's cleaner than the JPA. JPA, you could Wikipedia JPA. JPA, it was military use for military operations. You ever heard of Operation Popeye in Vietnam? That's when they came in and hit it with the chemicals. This is the fucking, what is that, late 60s, 70s? Operation Popeye. Google that one if you haven't heard of it. I hope you've heard of it. If you haven't, holy shit, okay? This is real stuff. We made it rain so much that it mudded up and flooded out all the Viet Cong in Vietnam. And the theory was we're going to flood them out, and that'll create a disadvantage, and we can storm in or nuke them, napalm them, what? Just the sick fucking shit that we do to fucking with people's sovereignty. I mean, oh my God, I can't stand communists. Can we not spray them with chemicals like napalm and geoengineering project just because we don't like communists? Can we? My God. Let's find some common ground here, folks. Give peace a chance, for Christ's sake. Operation Popeye is documented, well documented. We did that. It actually backfired. In my opinion, pretty clear from anyone else's military perspective. We couldn't even get through the roads that we juiced so heavy with our own people. And then you've got snakes and other things, got soldiers walking in the water. The other chemicals we're dumping. It's raining so hard, the napalm and all this Agent Orange. I've had a couple of friends. I've had a lot of Vietnam guys come and go in my life. I feel like I was connected maybe possibly to a previous energy in Vietnam. I've even had people call me captain. I've had Vietnam vets swear that I fought with them. True story. It hasn't happened for about 20 or 30 years, but that used to happen to me all the time. These veterans that knew me, said they knew me. And I actually started calling myself a captain at one point. And then I was like colonel. It was a weird time. Okay. But when enough people start saying that you're in Vietnam in a previous life or whatever the hell they happened or may have happened or probably didn't happen, but we could dream about or speculate. You start calling yourself the colonel. I don't know. I'm feeling much better now, though. I'm all over that. But it was a really strange real time for me. This whole Vietnam thing. So digress. Come back. The whole point was it's geoengineering, Operation Popeye. This jet fuel that changed. So everyone's seeing these big fat honker lines. They look like a cocaine party from the 1980s, right? Follow me? In the sky, big honker white cloud lines that somehow expand and very, very strange. That's the commercial fuel in large part. I believe 90 or 95% is because they switched that. All planes have it. Now, there's special little planes with little flippers. They got these little cylinders. I don't have a picture on it, but they got these little cylinders and silver iodine. The ski resorts, they use this. This is all well documented. Utah, Idaho, Sun Valley, they all do these silver iodide things where they shoot on up. And when there's a cloud, its timing's really important, and you can try to harness, and it will dump snow if you get the timing right and get that chemical. I think it's a silver iodine type thing. Again, climateviewer.org, because that's where the data and facts, the encyclopedia of all geoengineering, climate change, climateviewer.org. I believe it's .org instead of .com. Professor Lee, again, Jim Lee, I'm plugging the hell out of him because he really is the guy is. You won't believe the data once you look at it. So I'll digress. I think I should have wrapped up. I'm kind of going long-winded here on Vietnam and Jim Lee. But it's really significant. And why am I long-winded about the jet fuel part? It came up. In conclusion, it came up. I think one of the questions that Novik even asked in the earlier session, not the public session, about, hey, how about if we put explosive lithium batteries next to explosive fossil fuels in all the gas stations everywhere? Wait, what, bro? What the fuck, dude? Get out of here. Get your ass out of here. Stupid motherfucking question, bro. Yeah. Don't put your hand up for that shit either. It's stupid. You got to keep that shit separate. It's lithium batteries explode. They have all kinds of, there's a overrun. I don't know what that scientific term. I'll look it up and have a better video some other day here soon. But there's run over, whatever it's called. There's an energy thing that it happens and it explodes. It doesn't just create fires. It actually blows the fucking EV car up and then fire. And then the firefighters can't put it out. You put water on it, it's like putting gas on it. Look at the lithium battery in Monterey. Look at the video footage of the Monterey. And then they thought it went out. They let it burn out. And then they had everyone go back to their homes. And then it reignited. So, people are like, well, that's due laser direct energy weapons or something. And I'm like, I don't know. I think it sounds more like incompetence. But how weird that you've got a couple of fires reigniting the same place for 2 weeks now. Doesn't that seem a little odd? Doesn't that seem like anti-climate action, anti-climate change measures when you're doing that kind of toxic poison? Listen, we got to get over this bizarre love affair, infatuation, like young college kids in a strip club with a bunch of beauties. We got to get over the lithium battery. The romance with lithium batteries is done. It's not safe. It's not green. You've got cobalt. I know Elon's going, shut your mouth, motherfucker. The cobalt mines, you've got children that are being exploited in Africa. There's nothing sustainable about it. The batteries are temporary. You only get 10 years out of them, and then you got to bury them because you can't renew them. Read about it. The more I read about it, I'm like, this is like the greatest Ponzi scheme of all time. My God. And then look at these plants. Monterey fire just last week. The other fire that burned all the millionaires' houses is getting a lot more attention. This EV electric battery facility is even a bigger story about the failures of climate change measures. They're doing the opposite direction of what they're intending to do because it's foolish shit. All right. Hour and a half? Oh, I'm so sorry. Good God. If you lasted through that, God bless you. Group hug. Big group hug, and God bless you. I couldn't have sat through me for an hour and a half, but all right. Well, maybe you'll watch it on the replay. And I also want to get this out to the commissioners down at Portland because I want these perspectives that I've given are very, very unique. I'm an old school Portlander. I'm an old environmental activist. I worked for all those, half of the groups that were even being down there testifying, saying we got to shut down fossil fuels and, by God, stop Zenith train car. Fossil fuels are not our enemy. And if we don't have cheap fuel prices, small business not only won't thrive, THRIVE, it won't survive. And we certainly are not going to be able to keep our food prices down, our egg prices down, although that's another video in itself. They're intentionally creating an egg crisis by killing all these chickens that don't need to be killed. Another video altogether. But we can't get all that stuff. All we have to do is do some critical thinking analysis on the last 4 years with this fucking Marxist communist Joe Biden administration, right? If you can't see what we need to avoid, gasoline at $6 and $7. If we would have had 4 more years of Kamala Harris, gasoline would have been easily $10 in California. And that's if we shut down Zenith, gasoline is going to be $10, maybe more in Portland, Oregon. Mark my words. You don't have to be a psychic gypsy palm reader, although I am, to know that is what happens. Supply and demand. You stranglehold the supply, then your demand goes up and the price goes all the way through the roof. And you make the fossil fuel companies even tenfold richer than if you didn't do the stupid shit. So no more stupid shit. Fuck lithium batteries. Certainly don't put them next to the fossil fuel tanks. All right, Commissioner? Bad idea. God bless. Peace out.